5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and Deputies. I'm delighted to be here today on foot of our submission to talk about oversight of Garda Síochána. I am joined by my colleague Damien Walsh, Membership Development Worker with the Irish Traveller Movement. I welcome the opportunity for our organisation to feed into a vital process to ensure our police force has an independent process to oversee policing in this country. Let me stress from the outset that the Irish Traveller Movement recognises the difficult job that the women and men of Garda Síochána face in their work, facing not only dangerous and potentially life-threatening situations on a daily basis, but also the impact of cutbacks to their services, which places additional pressures on members of the Gardaí to carry out their functions. The Irish Traveller Movement has a strong relationship with Garda Síochána Racial and Intercultural and Diversity Office, and our organisation has regularly been invited to talk to trainees in Templemore in relation to the issues travellers face and the work we do as a movement. As you will have seen from our submission, our members, local traveller organisations, have stressed the positive relationships that have been built between travellers, traveller organisations and Garda Síochána on a local level through initiatives such as the local traveller interagency committees, and this work is to be applauded, as it has a substantial influence in building up the trust between members of my community and members of the Gardaí. Trust in our policing service, given the pivotal role Garda Síochána plays, is vital for every member of Irish society, regardless of our ethnicity. However, as noted in our submission, trust in our police force among travellers is not as strong as it is among the general population. Our submission made to the committee and our presentation here today will stress the need for an independent policing board, and that travel representation on that board will be vital in order to build the trust into the future. In comparison with the Garda Public Attitude Survey, a traveller ethnic minority communities attitude surveys conducted by the Garda Síochána in 2007 shows a significant level of dissatisfaction with the force among travellers. While 14% of the general population surveyed were very satisfied with the service of Garda Síochána, only 5% of travellers were. More worryingly, while 16% of the general population were dissatisfied, 26% of travellers were, and while only 3% of the general population were extremely dissatisfied with the service of Garda Síochána, 22% of travellers were. So we can see from a survey carried out by the force itself that there is cause for concern in terms of the relationship between travellers and Garda Síochána. We would note that this survey, which has not been replicated since, was carried out before the establishment of local traveller interagency committees, whereas we mentioned earlier, relationships have often developed between traveller organisations and the Gardaí. The Traveller Ethnic Minorities Community Attitude Survey suggested that attitudes towards the Gardaí are negatively related to personal experience of the Gardaí, and that in both surveys with the general public and minority groups, those who had no contact were more likely to rate the Gardaí with higher levels of satisfaction than those who had no contact or had contact. This is borne out by concerns raised by our members in preparing our submission to this committee. Many travellers do not feel the Gardaí offer protection to them in terms of travellers being victims of the crime. For example, a slow response time to traveller calls of incidents on halting sites. Travellers feel the Gardaí see us as only criminals and never as victims, and cite practices of frequent stop and search, questioning of travellers, especially van drivers and young traveller men generally, which further erodes trust between the force and the community. Some travellers report frequent Garda car patrols and halting sites, group housing schemes up to 3 times a day. Travellers feel this is merely to keep them under surveillance, as during these patrols there is no interaction from the Gardaí with the community. The surveillance or perceived surveillance of the entire community by the Gardaí further alienates travellers from Garda Síochána. Installation of CCTV cameras beside existing or planned traveller accommodation without notification or public consultation further erodes trust. In terms of direct contact between travellers and Garda Síochána, while many travellers have positive relationships, not only in reporting crime and making inquiries, members of the Gardaí have been tasked with carrying out evictions of traveller families, which strains relationships. Travellers often feel the use of armed response units and large numbers of Gardaí when other state officials are visiting halting sites, create a conflictual stance whereby Gardaí are no longer their police force. In terms of travellers using the Gardaí, some travellers do not feel they are treated with respect when they need to use Garda stations. For example, lack of eye contact, unfriendly manner, when Garda casually dropping into an unrelated conversation, stating that they know other family members who have criminal records, makes innocent people feel criminalised and racially profiled. Okay. This negative relationship is not only noted by our members, it is borne out by research carried out by on Garda Síochána, alluded to earlier. Recently, the work that has been undertaken and the relationships that have been built up through the hard work of An Garda Síochána and local traveller organisations has been severely damaged by the recent allegations by Garda whistleblowers in relation to ethnic profiling of travellers, including traveller infants on the Garda Pulse system. The Irish Traveller Movement has been inundated with calls and emails from travellers who fear their details of their children's details have been entered into the Pulse system simply because of their identity. We feel these very few allegations have caused such widespread distrust amongst the community and has seriously impacted on relationships between the Garda Síochána and travellers in Ireland. As Director of the Irish Traveller Movement, I wrote to the then Minister for Justice asking for Sean Gearden's investigation to be broadened to specifically investigate these claims. Unfortunately, this did not happen, and an opportunity to restore travellers' confidence in our police force was lost. I'll just wrap it up. Thank you, Chair. Given the concerns outlined by our members, it appears that not enough has been done to overcome potential institutional bias. Indeed, the allegations in relation to ethnically profiling traveller influence is confirmed by many the existence of institutional anti-traveller racism within the force. It is on this basis, Chair, that the Irish Traveller Movement face that, based on best international practice, a policing board would be formed in order to oversee the practice of An Garda Síochána. Legislation should be developed and enacted.
In fairness, yeah, wants to come in on the final question. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. I apologise.
I would concur with what my colleague Des has said. Certainly we would see that there is a gap in training, and that the call-outs for us to provide training have decreased. Whether that's resource-driven, I can't say, but there is a huge need for it because we find that there is an attitude towards minorities within the Gardaí that is really unhealthy at times, and not within the majority of the Gardaí, but within certain Gardaí, and that good training and consistent training can overcome that. And so we would be fully in support of more training for the Gardaí.
Thank you. Right, Deputy McGrath, sorry about that.
Chair, just first of all, I just want to say to all the groups, I want to thank and commend you for both your written and oral submissions in relation to this whole process. I just think it's made a major contribution to many of the new ideas, and we all want to reform, we all want to make change, and we also want to do the right thing. So I just want to say personally that I really appreciated all of the submissions here today, because it was a major valuable contribution. So my question, Chair, is in relation to, first of all, can I start with Bridget from the Irish Travellers Movement, because I think it's an issue that we should, very important that we should focus on, and that's the issue of trust between the travelling community and the Gardaí. And in your submission, Bridget, you mentioned there that 53% of travellers were not satisfied with the Gardaí, and I think you had 22% you said were extremely dissatisfied. So there's obviously a huge disconnect there, that we as members of the Oireachtas and that people representing travellers in the Gardaí, we have to deal with this issue because it's a huge issue. So you also mentioned your submission about the local traveller interagency committees. Now my question is, are these having an impact, and have you any ideas about how can we improve on that trust as part of this process of reform of the Gardaí?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Quilligan. Yeah.
Well, as the figures show, there is a very high level of mistrust between travellers and the Gardaí and vice versa, and this is very evident in dealings with the Gardaí.
Can we actually move on from there? That was the question at the end.
How we can move on from there is, I suppose, by first of all gathering more data, and do more research into it. Like that research that was carried out, I think it was carried out in 2007. We need more fact-based data to accurately reflect the current relationships between, and how travellers, the attitudes of travellers towards the Gardaí and vice versa. We need to be able to back that up. But if you look at some of the the incidents that have happened lately around allegations of racial profiling around the Pulse system and traveller children as young as a few months old being allegedly recorded on the Pulse system under intelligence. That does a huge disservice to any kind of relationship between Gardaí and travellers, and that has rolled things back significantly. If we didn't think they could be rolled back, it has been. So I suppose what we would recommend is that immediately a full and independent inquiry be developed around the Pulse system and around allegations of racial profiling. We would suggest that Gardaí and sit down with travellers and travel representative groups to look at the issues and to map out maybe a piece of research around how to, what the current situation is and how to progress from it, and look at best practice internationally and how other countries deal with minority groups and support minority groups, so that minority groups aren't afraid, number one, to report crime, aren't afraid to approach the Gardaí, and that that a relationship develops, because at the end of the day, what happens is that travellers are afraid to report crimes because they feel, if you're, even for instance domestic violence, if there's a woman experiencing domestic violence on a site, we've heard experiences where the Gardaí would come out into the site and rather than investigating the incidents of domestic violence, they would look and take numbers for car, look for tax and insurance, pick up people for petty fines and, that kind of behaviour, that if Gardaí is called out to report or for a crime to be reported, that the Gardaí would deal with that crime. And just, I think the whole attitude is there that travellers are criminals, and that's what we as a people feel. And how we would roll on from that, I think, is by sitting down and consulting with each other and trying to build relationships. My colleague Damien wants
to... Sorry, briefly,
most people have alluded to the unmanagement report in 2004, but as part of that human rights audit, the researchers found that, and I quote, officers and members of Garda Síochána expressed negative views about some communities, in particular travellers in the Nigerian community, and found that allegations of levels of criminality among traveller and Nigerian communities were made at every level of those taking part in this survey, with very little evidence to provided to substantiate them. And they concluded in Human Rights and Operational Proceeding that on the basis of the audit, it seems clear that there is an institutional racism within Garda Síochána in dealing with certain groups in the community, and the absence of organisational structures would identify and deal what is a very fundamental abuse of human rights. And I think what we were trying to bring to this is, if there is an independent Garda authority, it does require some input from travellers to try and restore that confidence, because we need to have this happen in 2004. I think there is a need for ongoing audits of human rights practices within Garda Síochána, and it needs that independent oversight. There has been significant work since then at a local level, and it has restored a huge amount of trust that has been eroded again through the allegations around Pulse and potential institutional racism. That needs to be independently addressed, and it needs to be done as a matter of urgency. And in the future with the Garda authority, it requires, as we have alluded before, given the historical lack of relationship between travellers and other minority ethnic groups, it does need representation from communities such as traveller Roma communities on an authority to direct any future human rights audits that would take place of the police force.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Joyce.